Last show of the year, 4 days to Christmas. So, naturally, we've been making a list. And yes, we have checked it twice. It's short and it's traditional. Gold, the gift of kings. Actually, he's already picked up quite a bit in his side hustle with a bullion firm. But enough to make him ruler? Not quite yet. Frankincense, the gift of priests. Until recently, nobody thought she had a prayer. But maybe, just maybe, the congregation's beginning to listen again. Myrrh, the gift of, well, undertakers. Obviously, he's not dead yet, but 2026 could be the year his party starts looking for a sacrificial lamb. After a grim first full year in office, I'll speak to the Labour Party chair, Anna Turley. The leaders had a better few months, but the party still seemed buried in the polls. I'll speak to Conservative Deputy Chair Matt Vickers. And with a British couple facing Christmas under detention in Iran, we'll talk to their son, Joe Bennett. Plus, with us throughout the show, co-host of the Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, Anne McElvoy. Former Conservative advisor, Salma Shah. And former Lib Dem advisor, Polly Mackenzie. Welcome to Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips. Shockingly, there are people who believe that Santa is not a real person. Given that small folk might be watching TV at this time of day, we're not allowed by the authorities to broadcast such slanders. Young minds need to be protected from fake news. I know that some of our guests would love to have a rule preventing us from casting doubt on the claims they make. Mr. Trump stopped 8 wars. Labour kick-started growth. Liz Truss's premiership was just a collective hallucination. Fortunately, we are permitted to question politicians' fantasies. You know the sort of thing. You hear them week after week, right here. That tax rise that looks like a tax rise isn't really a tax rise. There will never be a Tory reform deal. The country can afford the triple lock on pensions. Not to mention that we'll employ more doctors, teachers and police officers, build 300,000 new homes a year, stop the boats and save billions by introducing AI without the slightest impact on public services. And of course, great one, our party leader is an underappreciated genius who has my full support and who I would never dream of trying to replace. Well, I'm professionally sceptical, but for me, the great redeeming feature of most of the individuals we interview is that I think they do genuinely believe what they're saying at the moment they're saying it. All that said, this year we haven't been short of you couldn't make it up moments in politics. We'll be revisiting some of the best later in the show. But first, let's get up to date with what's on ministers' minds as we head for the holiday season. Let's see how Labour's feeling about its first full year back in office. And I can speak now to the party's chair, Anna Turley. Good morning.
Good morning, Trevor. Hi.
Before we get on to the politics, later I'll be talking to Joe Bennett, whose parents, Lindsay and Craig Foreman, are going to spend Christmas week locked up in Tehran's Evin prison. Are you aware if the Foremans have actually been charged with anything?
I'm afraid I'm not aware of that at the moment, but I'm sure as a government we'll be doing everything we can to meet with the family and to find out everything we can about the situation and to assist.
But what is the Foreign Office actually saying to the Iranians? I mean, these people have been there since, I think, the 3rd of January this year.
Obviously, this is a really, really difficult situation for them and for their families, and we think about them particularly at this time of year. So I'm sure the Foreign Secretary will be doing everything that they can to assist them, and it's something, of course, that the government takes seriously. We care for every British citizen around the country, so I know that this time of year we'll be working hard to do everything we can to support the family.
All right, let's get on to the hard politics. The leader of the opposition said the following: "We have a Prime Minister who is so scared of being unpopular that he's incapable of taking tough decisions until it's too late." Not Kemi Badenoch, in fact, but Keir Starmer speaking of Boris Johnson in 2020. But wouldn't those words apply just as accurately to Starmer himself after 18 months of U-turns?
No, we've taken a lot of difficult decisions this year. We've had to stabilise the economy after really inheriting an absolute wreck in the economy and public services on their knees. So we've had to do some really difficult things, but we've stabilised the economy. We're starting to see that recovery grow, and as we go into the new year, I'm really optimistic about delivering the kind of change that people voted for last year and to see them starting to see and feel it in their pockets and in their local communities. For example, we know that we've seen wages go up more in 10 months than they went up under 10 years under the Conservatives. And there's a £500 improvement now in people's real terms wages above when we took power. So that's a real tangible difference to people's lives, alongside the huge raft of things that we've brought in to help people with the cost of living, whether that's spreading free school meals, wider access to free school meals, bringing in breakfast clubs, supporting with free nursery and childcare. These are really important issues that are going to make a real difference to people's ability to put food on the table and support their families. And this is the kind of change that Labour came in to deliver.
Is the problem here with the voters that they just haven't noticed how lucky they've been? You've lost 14 points in polls since the election. What's gone wrong?
Well, I think rightly people are impatient for change. We all are. And people voted for change. That was on the front of our manifesto last year. But it takes time to deliver that. It takes time to stabilise things from the chaos that we inherited. For example, our employment rights bill, which is going to have a huge impact on people in terms of more maternity and paternity rights, that's only just been able to get through Parliament. So change takes time to deliver, especially when you had to have the inheritance that we had for getting public services on their knees. But yes, we're starting to see improvements in the NHS. Satisfaction is on the up. We've delivered 5 million more appointments. This is real, tangible change. And
yes,
of course, we know things are still tough for people. You know, we live in the real world.
Yeah.
We know, things are still hard. But I'm conscious with every single day that goes by next year, people will really start to see and feel more money in their pockets, better public services when they're looking for an appointment with the doctor, their streets and their neighbourhoods looking better and better. And that change takes time, but we will be delivering that in the new year. And I'm confident people will really start to see that.
Can I suggest an alternative reason for the voters apparently not having noticed all this wonderfulness? Do we need to count the promises that you made that haven't got delivered? Winter fuel allowance cut, promised but not delivered. No tax rises, promised but not delivered. Day one rights in the employment bill that you've just talked about, promised but not delivered. Trans guidance, promised but not delivered. I could do this all morning. Isn't the problem here that every time you've been confronted with one of these difficult choices you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, actually what's happened is you've run away, and maybe that's the reason the voters haven't been noticing all the wonderful things you've done?
No, not at all. Of course, there's so many things that we needed to fix. Like I said, we're already delivering on the NHS with more appointments,
well, my point is
more
you didn't
GPs.
fix them. Every time you said you were going to do something, you did something else.
Well, there's a huge amount of things to be dealt with, and of course, there are things that come down the track. We've had to deal with, big international challenges as well. The Prime Minister's delivered 4 trade deals. He's been out across the world restoring Britain's place in the world. There's so many important things that we had to tackle with, but we were absolutely delivering on our manifesto pledge. Like I said, we've just delivered the employment rights bill, which people will start to see and feel with greater maternity and paternity rights next year. We're delivering Pride in Place, putting money right back into the heart of communities like mine, so people can see and feel it on their high streets. We're delivering on the NHS. We're delivering in schools. Those breakfast clubs are going to send children to schools with full bellies ready to learn. We're going to lift 500,000 children out of poverty. These are really big things that we are delivering on, that we came into government to change. That's the kind of change that we'll start to see and feel next year. This is the kind of change that Labour government is delivering, putting people and particularly children at the forefront of that change.
Well, let's take a very concrete example. At the centre of the Chancellor's promise was growth, and she said that she was going to sweep away all the planning constraints, that infrastructure was going to be, the infrastructure plan was going to be freed. People in Leeds, not so far from where you are, were told they'd finally get a new tram that had been discussed since 1993. This week, you pushed that back to the end of the 2030s. I mean, what really is the point?
Well, we're delivering a huge change. You're £1.5 million houses that we're going to deliver by the election.
Of something that you said would happen and was great, and you're absolutely not delivering that.
But, I mean, in transport as a whole, we're capping bus fares, which is what makes a real difference to people's lives. We've brought the railways back under national control so that we can freeze fares for the first time in 30 years. These are real tangible things. And, of course, we've got to take difficult decisions because, we don't have the money that we'd like to have to deliver all of the projects that we would love to dream of. But we're doing the real things that make a tangible difference to people's lives. As I said, freezing rail fares, freezing bus fares as well, and delivering on the services that matter to help people get to work, to help them get about their day-to-day lives. These are the kind of transport outcomes that we're delivering that make a real difference to people's lives. This is real Labour values in action, and it's making people feel it in their pockets.
The former Housing Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, sat here when she was still in that job and said, no worries, 1.5 million homes. We're going to be getting on to 300,000 homes a year. You haven't even got near 200,000 housing starts.
Well, again, as I said, these things take time to deliver. Everyone wants change tomorrow, and that's the world that we live in, and we understand that. But I know Steve Reed, the new Housing Secretary, is absolutely obsessed with this. I've seen him in his baseball cap saying, build, baby, build. We're delivering the legislation. We're putting everything in place to deliver these houses because we know that young people in particular want to get their foot on the housing ladder, and we know that for a generation, people have been left behind without the ability to get the homes that they need, and that's what this Labour government is delivering.
All right. Is Keir Starmer still going to be leader of your party next Christmas?
Of course, absolutely. As I said, people will really start to see and feel the change in their pockets. Keir's got a very clear vision for making sure that people can really deal with the cost of living, that public services will get back on their knees, on their feet. And he's building a Britain that is one that is tolerant, that is open, that is confident in itself, and that is really about renewal and investment in young people, as opposed to the division and the decline of the opposition. And I've sat around that cabinet table, and there is a team there that are ruthlessly focused on delivering on their day-to-day basis, whether it's the NHS, whether it's education, whether it's defence, whether it's housing. This is a team behind him that's determined to deliver on the promises that we made last year and to support a Prime Minister that's got a clear vision for a renewal of this country against division and decline that the opposition offer.
Delivery, clear vision, all the rest of it. The electorate doesn't seem to be buying it. He is the most unpopular Prime Minister still since they started counting these ratings. Is that why you're allowing councils to put off elections until next year?
No, not at all. We're undertaking the biggest change in local government in 50 years, and that takes time, and councils have come to us saying that they don't feel that they've got the ability to manage this process, so we're engaging with them, and it's right that we don't put things forward for an election when councils don't feel that they've got the capacity and the ability to deliver them. So it's really important that we have this conversation and we do it in a managed way. This is a huge programme of local government reform, and it's right that we do it sensibly and calmly, and that takes time to deliver. If I were interviewing somebody in Latin America or Africa and they said what you've just said to me, you'd already be saying banana republic, speechifying about the dangers of authoritarianism. If the government were to find that there was some complex reorganisation going on, for example, somebody might have pledged to get rid of the House of Lords and they might be deciding to do that in 2028. Might that be a reason to put off a general election in 2028-29? No, we've still got a huge amount of elections coming up this year in Scotland, in Wales, all of London are out. We've got elections across the country. We've got a huge programme of elections coming up in May. So you can't...
You've given 63 local authorities the option to delay their election so they can stay in office for another year. It's probably rather cheap to say turkeys and Christmas and what are they going to choose. But really?
Well, the reality is we're moving to unitary council processes. There's a huge restructuring of local government, and it's really difficult for them to manage that alongside, running elections as well. So they're very clear with us that they want to have the time to do this properly. We're in discussion and debate with them, but the priority is we've got a huge programme of elections this May, but the reality is while we're undertaking massive restructuring, as I said, the biggest in a generation, it's really important that we give councils the capacity to do this so they don't keel over.
All right, so just to be absolutely clear for viewers who are currently shouting at the television screen, even if things are difficult and there is reorganisation of Westminster, as I say, you promised to get rid of the House of Lords, there is going to be no delay on a general election.
We promised to get rid of hereditary peers, and we're undertaking that programme. So, that is ongoing. And, the general elections always come at the decision of the Prime Minister, and that's the reality of the process that we have in this country. And I'm looking forward to spending the next couple of years setting out our programme for reform and delivery for the country.
Yeah, there's an outer limit, which I think is January 2029 or something like that. And what I'm not hearing you saying is that this Labour government can't see any circumstances on which you would choose to do what you've done in local authorities, for local authorities, and delay a general election, which I've got to say, I'm finding surprising that you can't just say no general election will go beyond the 5-year term.
Well, of course the general election will come. The House of Lords aren't elected, so I'm a bit sort of confused as to why House of Lords reform would impact on a general election. So there's no change to a plan for a general election. But there is, of course, a lot of reorganisation going on at local government level. We've got to run these elections.
But, all right.
No.
All right.
I'm not sure where this has come from, but no. We're not.
Okay.
I mean, I'm thinking about the elections in May. That's our priority,
right.
and setting out our programme to come over the days, weeks and months ahead for what we're delivering for people in their communities.
You think about the elections of May that have been delayed. Anyway, look, let me come back to
there's loads of elections happening in May, Trevor. I'm focused on Scotland and Wales and London.
Let's come back to the thing that you appear to think is the most important. On reform, you've been attacking Nigel Farage as a Putin apologist and a racist for months. Reform is polling... Wales, you mentioned Wales. Let's take Wales. Reform is polling at 30% in Wales, one of the birthplaces of the Labour movement. You are down to 10%. The strategy to kill off reform's failing pretty dramatically, isn't it?
Well, we're just focused on going for every single vote at the moment. Reforms offered to the country is really clear in my view. They offer decline, they offer division, they offer intolerance. They've got nothing to help people with the cost of living. They've got no plan for the NHS other than to privatise it and bring in an insurance model. They've opposed all of our workers' rights that are supporting people on maternity and paternity pay. They would offer tax cuts to the richest. There's nothing about reform that would support working people. So we're absolutely determined, day by day, we'll set out our vision for the country. We'll deliver for people in their pockets, in their public services and in their local communities, and we'll start to see the difference as we come into the new year, and we'll fight for every single vote.
You're determined, you're going to fight for every vote. Look, we know each other, you're a realistic person. You've never lost an election in Wales. You are heading for an absolute belting. Wouldn't it be time for you to acknowledge that something dramatic has happened for your party? And let me give you perhaps one explanation. Nobody likes your leader. He's got the worst personal ratings since they've been counted. Well,
midterm elections are always hard for every single government coming in, and I'm old enough to remember new Labour governments which lost over 1,000 councillors in 1999. It's always a challenge when people have voted a party in on the manifesto of change and they want, and quite rightly, demand change to happen urgently. We've got to prove that, and in Wales, we've got a good track record. We've got important things to fight for around the NHS, around pride in our communities, big investment going in there into jobs and opportunities for young people. That's the programme that we're bringing to people against a programme of division and decline, which offers nothing on the NHS, nothing for working people in Wales, and it's our job to continue to make that case.
Let me just ask you very quick. It's a sort of personal question, really. Is it going to be your job as party chair next May, after you get a thumping, to tell the Prime Minister that the game's up and that the last great service he can do for the party is to resign?
Nonsense, not at all. We're a team. We've got a great Prime Minister. We're united behind him. We'll continue to keep battling that. And it's the job that gets me out of bed every morning is to think about my community here in Redcar, to put more money into people's pockets, to get jobs and opportunities for young people, and to help our communities get a real boost so that people know the country has got a really strong, positive future and that Labour is delivering on their public services, on their cost of living and on the things that really matter to them.
Anna Turley, thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks very much. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, yeah. Well, let's see what our panel made of all that. We're joined all morning by the co-host of the Politics at Sam and Anne's podcast, Anne McElvoy of Politicos, former Conservative advisor Salma Shah, and the former Lib Dem advisor Polly Mackenzie. Anne, I always remember this as a time of, school reports. And I suspect that if we were giving Anna Turley school report, it would be Anna is distinguished for her optimism.
We could also say Anna tries hard, even when the lesson seems to be a difficult one for Anna Tully. I mean, having to go out there for Labour and repeat those lines. I do sometimes wonder whether they, could vary the language a bit more, but that those are the sort of press officer lines that you were getting back, despite your many provocations, Trevor. I think the difficulty is that
provocation, moi.
The difficulty is not only the raw state of the polling, but the sort of fizziness that we've been seeing in the run-up to the year end, where everybody seems to be giving interviews. Wes Streeting's out again today telling us that he's not running for leader, with a lovely picture of him going for a walk in a forest. And so this is it's a bit like the tone of this, we are simply getting on with delivering, just seems to be contradictory to the mood and the noises of. I think they're in genuine difficulty about the postponement of these local elections as well. It's you picked up on the good Nigel Farage. It's always on the nose, isn't it, with Farage, but turkeys don't vote for Christmas. Remember, over half of the places where these are being put off and postponed for quite a long time now, some of them until 2028, are in Labour hands, and a lot of them are very threatened by reform. What will voters really think of that? They weren't that keen in voting in local elections. I'm not sure that they like them being shoved off for so long.
Salma, tiny little detail here. Conservatives have crossed over. They're above Labour for the first time since the election.
I know, and it's incredibly surprising, but the whole sort of dividing line on the economy has been incredibly helpful for the Conservatives, because not only is it a division with Labour, it's also a division with Reform, and clear blue water for the Conservatives to actually start taking some of that old support back, and indeed maybe even going into some Lib Dem territory. There's always been that, I think, conflict between whether we chase Reform voters or whether we chase Lib Dem voters in order to sort of push out from our base and our core. But I do think it's quite surprising hearing Anna Turley, at this point in government, not really having a consistent message or narrative to sort of put out there. It was, as you say, sort of press officer lines, not really delivered in a way that felt genuine. And I think that is the disconnect between what Labour is attempting to do in government and creating that narrative and that messaging that might actually help them turn the corner. You've already had sort of Morgan McSweeney, it's been briefed out to the papers.
The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff.
At this retreat that they've had at Chequers, sort of saying 2026 is going to be a point in which we turn the corner. But we don't know that yet, because the signs in the economy are still poor. And Anna Turley kept referring to cost of living. She kept referring to putting money back into people's pockets. Well, that's fine, but some people would argue that having put subsidised rail tickets, rail fares, subsidised bus fares, having had all these subsidies, that's actually a net negative for the economy. So I don't know what we're going to do next year.
Polly, I must say, I think Anna made a good fist of trying to explain what they tried to do, but nobody seems to have noticed.
I think that is a challenge. I mean, I was surprised seeing her there on the Redcar coast with all these wind turbines behind her to not hear her talk about growth and jobs in the green economy. Actually, Ed Miliband is one of the few cabinet ministers who really has got a clear agenda driving it through that is leveraging significant amounts of kind of private capital investment into creating jobs. But again, I think they've ended up in the same position that David Cameron got into, of feeling like, oh, well, it's a bit woke sounding. It sounds like we don't care about people's bills. And so whilst this one area where they really are trying to create growth and jobs has turned, a bit as Salma says, into something that's really just about getting money back into people's pockets. The challenge is that something like that, the rail fare freeze, reduces the headroom for investment in the rail sector. By contrast, in housing, actually, they have done something much more sensible, which is go back to having housing association rents rising in order to put investment into the sector. So it's a sort of messy thing. And I think that is driven primarily by the chaos of having a number 10 that is coordinated and led by somebody who knows and is brilliant at campaigning. But actually, number 10...
Mr. McSweeney again.
Morgan McSweeney. Number 10 needs to be led by somebody who cares primarily about how to run the country. And making sure that you're managing the politics of that is critical, but it's running the country well whilst getting the politics right, not getting the politics right in order to sometimes think about running the country. And every so often, great delivery strategy is actually working for this government because the campaigners haven't looked at it yet. And they just need to flip that prioritisation.
And you follow all of these people closely and so on. And it's interesting listening to the three of you. I'm beginning to wonder, who is actually running the country? Is it a bloke called Starmer? Is it a bloke called McSomething?
Or is it someone else? Because inside number 10, it's pretty obvious that there'd be a lot of turf wars, there'd be a lot of changes. To Polly's last point, there's just been a reshuffle on health, on who's supposed to be advising the Prime Minister on health. Obviously, there's a bridge there to Wes Streeting, the shy and retiring...
Oh, is he running the country?
The shy, he could well be the shy head soon, the shy and retiring health secretary. But you do need people who care more about policy. And one of the things that almost seems too boring to say now, it's like the bread and butter of how this works. We talk a lot about turf wars in number 10 for the Prime Minister's ear, who's closer to him. As Tim Allen's a very powerful communications director, but there's obviously been a bit of a shift in the way that they've gone about messaging, and much more open perhaps to the idea of this broad centre-left sort of grouping that they need to go after, rather than the sort of old New Labour ways that you'll remember of trying to sort of grab the centre ground and even be a bit more right of centre. I think that's a little bit confused where that lands. But ultimately, as Polly's suggesting, if you don't really have a grip on delivery, the people who've really fallen out of windows, I mean, fortunately not in a Russian way, but, in a polite, democratic way, are those who've been involved with delivery. Those delivery units have been utterly chaotic. So it's not really surprising that some of this are probably the only ministries that are getting their work done are the ones that are just getting on with it. I think they've just got to decide, number 10, where to step forward and where they should just step back and let the departments do their work.
Am I making too big a deal of this offer to local councils to delay local elections? It just seems very curious to me.
No, not at all. I think you're bang on, actually. I think, Polly and I have a difference of opinion on this.
OK.
I think that it's all well and good to say there's going to be this huge reform, so what we've got to do is delay the election. I mean, surely you would delay the reform and have the election and then deliver on the reform. That would be the sensible way to do it. And let's not forget that these elections have been delayed once already. So it's just this hiding to nothing if you just say, well, we can't do it for this technocratic reason. But I know Polly thinks it might be a bit much to sort of talk about corruption.
I think it's a bit overblown to suggest this is corruption, right? Because, as she says, there are those big elections in Scotland, in Wales, in London, and, the idea that Keir Starmer's going to get off scot-free in May without having some bad electoral tests is kind of nonsense. I think the challenge with this government always is that they are often trying to do things that are in conflict, right? They're trying to grow the economy, but they're also trying to slash immigration. And we know that additional people mean additional kind of GDP, so those things are in conflict. They're trying to build lots of houses, but they're also trying to reorganise local government, which designs local plans. And so, actually, it's a huge conflict. Personally, I would have.
But
I would
grown-up
not bothered
government
with
can
the
walk and
reform.
chew gum at the same time.
Yes.
Well, can they? I mean, this is the entire problem, isn't it, about delivery?
You have to prioritise. And if you've got that instability at local government level, it will affect the house building. So what I would have done is pause the local government reform, get the house building numbers up. But if you are going ahead with the local government reform, actually delaying it means you're pushing back your house building delivery even further. And that is the one thing that's most likely to deliver cost of living benefits and actual growth to the government. So if you're thinking about 2028, 2029, you need to get the house building working, which means that the reform has to go ahead.
I have to say, it doesn't really matter who's running things in number 10. I suspect they're going to be transfixed by this set of numbers here, which is, as we've heard, Wales. Wales. I think they used to say that the Labour Party owes more to Methodism than Marx, meaning the Welsh chapels. This was the origins of Wales. Nobody in Wales thinks of voting anything else but Labour, but look at it now. What the heck's happened here?
I mean, I think this is what's happening across the country, which is an absolute reaction against mainstream politics. And we've seen it. We've talked about this, I think, in various forms for at least the last decade. Probably one of the reasons, actually, there was a coalition that was thrown up in 2010, post-financial crisis. And since then, we've sort of lurched from all these different types of electoral pacts, and underlying that is actually a real fragility in the way that we voted. But this is the new normal.
We're now in five, six-party politics.
But it's still not clear, even on that. It's extraordinary. I was just totting up in my head there, Trevor. You could take those top two, Plaid and Reform, and they take the three underneath. You would take three of the four. It would need those three to equal about 30%. So it's bizarre, isn't it? You're seeing that total collapse. However, it's not clear. It's such a highly proportional system, that it's really not clear what comes out of it. And that Plaid vote, as well as those who are ardent Welsh nationalists, is being driven by people who want to stop reform. And I think we might be underweighting a bit in our conversation that there's also the beginnings of a really strong, as people wake up to the fact that reform could do very well in what remains of the May elections, is that there is also a sort of equal and opposite, really strong desire to sort of vote against reform. And that makes the outcome a bit more mysterious than perhaps there's with the proportionality than that graph shows. And it's going to be an utterly fascinating election at the Senedd.
But the striking thing, I think, though, about the reform vote is how consistent it has been over months.
It has been. And of course, in Wales as well, UKIP also did very well. But it's interesting, given that you're sort of so upset about the notion that Britain might be a bit of a banana republic, actually, that kind of Labour hegemonic power in Wales forever is, I think, just basically a bad thing, right? Ever since the Welsh Assembly was created, Labour has been in government, occasionally in a sort of very marginal coalition. Actually having a change of power to push for a different way of running Wales, I think it's just worth doing, because actually democracy requires and benefits from a kind of turnover of political leadership.
All right. If it's been a tough year for the government, it's not been much better for the official opposition, despite Labour's woes. That's because the Tories have lost votes, polling support, MPs, councillors and donors to reform. I can speak now to the Conservative Party's Deputy Chair and Shadow Policing Minister, Matt Vickers. Good morning.
Good morning.
Have you opened negotiations yet with Reform about an electoral pact?
No, we're going to go out there and smash these next elections. The reality is we had a tough general election. If anybody thought that we were going to, dust ourselves off and be back in the game within months, then they're a bit mad. Actually, Kemi's been out there. She's been doing the homework on the ground, hearing what the message that the British people sent us, and going back with a real offer. And there's actually a big dividing ground out there. The big division between us and the other parties is that we're the party on the side of working people. We're not going to go around nationalising everything that moves. We're not going to tax them to death. We're not going to give away benefits, limitless levels of benefits. We're not going to remove that two-child clap like Reform, like Labour. We're here for working people who are doing the right thing.
Can I just do something which I sometimes have to do in interviews, which is, you just said we're going to go out there and smash these elections. Are you sure you want that to be your testimony? Because it will be played again after the May elections and after every election since then. So just...
We are. We're going to get out there. We're going to make our pitch to the British people. And you know what? Taylor's oldest time. Labour get into power. Every Labour government ever leaves office with more people out of work than when they arrived. And this government are doing it in record time. 21% more people out of work. That's not an accident. That is because she slammed them with business rates. It's because of the jobs tax. It's because of all the bureaucracy coming from that employment rights bill. People out there who work hard, who do the right thing, who create jobs are suffering.
You left office with a massive black hole in the public finances.
There is as much evidence of the Loch Ness monster, and we've already heard
and the deficit.
That she knows. Rachel Reeves knows how
deficit.
to. Why was there a deficit?
And
why was there a deficit?
You tell me.
Why did the deficit grow? Why did it grow?
What?
What happened? There was something that happened.
Oh, I see.
Before the election.
It wasn't you at all. It was COVID, was it?
You got it. You're right. COVID created havoc on public finances. But we were bringing
Liz
things
Truss,
back together.
hallucination.
We had the fastest growing
Liz
economy
Truss,
in the G7.
just a delusion. She didn't happen at all.
We can start talking about Liz Truss, or we can talk about the issues that are facing this country today. We can talk about the fact that that deficit is as high as it was, that taxes were as high as they were, because of, as you rightly pointed out, that pandemic. But the reality is this government doesn't have a pandemic. It doesn't have a war. It's increasing the amount of borrowing. It's increasing the cost of that borrowing. It increases everybody's taxes, and it's putting people
To be
out
fair,
of work.
it doesn't have a pandemic or a war, but it's got an inheritance from you. 14 years. No growth.
Inflation was on target.
No growth.
Inflation was on target. Growth was the highest in the G7. It's now the lowest in the G7. The forecast going forwards tells us it's going to be reduced every year. But that's not an accident. It's because anybody who goes out and creates jobs is being taxed to death for doing so. Because business rates slamming local pubs, local small businesses. All these people are being put out of work. Hospitality, 111,000 jobs lost. 2 venues closing every day. That is because the jobs tax, the increases in business rates, the hassle of the Employment Rights Bill. Anybody who goes out there, tries to create jobs and deliver economic growth is being battered by Rachel Reeves' jobs taxes.
Right, let me go back to the actual question I asked you. In spite of everything that's been thrown at him, Nigel Farage's party is steady around 30%. You're picking up a bit, but you're not winning back votes from Reform. Earlier this week, your chairman said he'd be up for a coalition with Reform after the next election. Why not accept reality and get on with it?
No, we're going to be out there delivering. We're going to be out there putting the pitch to the British people.
Oh, so Kevin
delivering our
Hollinrake,
message.
your boss, was wrong when he said that there could be a coalition with Reform after the next election because that might be the reality.
Our focus is going to be on delivering a Conservative
Yeah, but deal with the
because
question I'm
that's what
asking
this
you
country
rather than the
is
question
going
you want
need.
to answer.
Well, you can ask me.
Is
you
he
can ask
wrong?
me when we get there.
Is he wrong to have said that?
But what I'm telling you is that we're going to deliver a Conservative majority government. We're going to go out there. We've listened to people. We're going to put forward a pitch to the British people. And by the time of that next election, if it takes till 2029, there's going to be nothing left. They've been in office 18 months. 21% more people are out of work. This country needs the Conservative Party because we're the people who are fiscally responsible. We're the people who are on the side of those who work hard and do the right thing.
It might seem as though I'm teasing you, but I'm actually asking you quite a serious question. You're a Conservative. You've just spent the last 4 or 5 minutes telling me how terrible this Labour government is. So, presented with the choice, which is what it looks like it will be, are you going to lumber the nation with another 5 years of Starmer Labour, perhaps at the head of some rickety coalition with the Greens and so on, just because you can't swallow your pride and get together with other forces on the right?
Well, if I'm wrong and we're stuck in that situation, you can come back and ask me then. But I'm going to concentrate on delivering that Conservative majority government.
Well, the voters
and
need
getting
to.
it across
the
the
voters
line.
have a right to know what's in your mind.
Well, they know what we stand for. They know what we're about.
You
in terms of
complain
fiscal
that you
responsibility.
complain again and again in the House of Commons that the current Labour government came along, didn't tell anybody what it was going to do, and it's done all sorts of things that it didn't promise. Why not be clear and upfront with people now? We're
being clear. We're making our pitch. If they want someone who's fiscally responsible, if they want somebody who's going to drive down the benefits bonanza that's going on at the moment with giveaways left, right and centre, if they want people who support people who work hard, do the right thing, create jobs, then they know who to vote for. If they want somebody who's going to put the security of the nation first, they know who to vote for. It's the tale as old as time. Labour destroy the economy. We come in and pick up the pieces.
Look, some of your former members of Parliament seem to have made up their minds about the answer to the question I've been trying to ask you. They've jumped ship and they've followed MPs like senior Tories like Danny Kruger and Andrea Jenkins, who've gone to Reform. Are you sure that there isn't a danger that you end up in 2 years still, you're being very defiant about it and all that, but you end up in 2 years rejecting a deal only to turn around and find that all the troops that you thought you had behind me, the Tories, have already defected to Reform because they can see the writing on the wall?
There is a long, long way to go. We've got a lot of work to do to make that pitch, but that is exactly what we're going to do. Many of those people who've gone, good friends of mine, made their decision. I've made the decision. In fact, I've been out on the doorsteps. I've listened to people who are impressed by what Kemi's starting to do. She is starting to turn the ship around. There's a hell of a long way to go. There's a hell of a lot of work to do. We need to make that pitch to people. We're not taking anyone's vote for granted, but we're going to give it rock all to deliver for the British people, make that message and get on with the business.
OK, we've been discussing the issue of the delay in the local elections, and some of us think that this is probably a bad thing. Some people think it's inevitable, given the need for reorganisation and so on. I noticed actually a couple of councils, most Tory councils have said no, they don't want to delay, but a couple have said they want to delay elections.
Most Conservative councils have said no. The opposition, this party under Kemi has said no. In fact, we voted against the legislation that was being brought forward to move these things. Some of these people are going to see a delay of 2 years in their elections, like a 5-year term, a 7-year term even. For a council, that's wrong. That is democracy denied. It's the wrong thing to do. We need to get on with the job. We'd selected great candidates. We were ready to fight those elections. And we need to see the government getting on with it. It's entirely wrong. In fact, didn't you get some funky exclusive this morning from Anna Turley, who said she might be putting back a general election? I mean, how many years away is that? That's a bit scary.
To be absolutely fair, she didn't come out in favour of a dictatorship today, but I take your point.
She didn't quite, no.
OK, Matt Vickers, so we can see next 6 months, Tories are fighting, no deal with reform, you're out there and you're going to smash it.
Yeah.
Cool. Matt Vickers, thanks for your time this morning. Well, back to our panel, Anne, Salma and Polly. Well, Salma, I mean, the optimism is overflowing in this studio this morning. Convinced?
I believe Mr Vickers' performance is what in old parlance we used to refer to as thrusting young Turks, with people who are there wanting to go out there and create some kind of political reform. Look, I understand the messaging. We have to own, the Conservative Party has to own its own identity. It has to reshape itself under Kemi. And whilst there may be at some point some kind of pact or deal with reform further down the line, I don't think either entity is yet ready to have that discussion, largely because we don't actually know which way or where the cards are going to fall. The Conservatives are on the rise. Reform might be capping, maybe not in the polls, but certainly in terms of the support that they're drawing from former Conservatives and in terms of their activists. But who is the senior, who is the junior in this partner still has to be seen. And I think it would be too early to suggest at this point how those chips fall in terms of the way a pact would look. But indeed, there has to be some sort of unification on the right because both entities will be capped out at some point.
It's interesting, Polly. I mean, people have been coming in here and basically writing off Kemi Badenoch and so on, but actually you wouldn't call it a renaissance, but actually she seems to have bottomed out.
I think that's true. She's had better performances at party conference, at PMQs, and so the sense that the parliamentary party around her has doubts, I think has definitely quietened down. The challenge for her is cutting through to the voters. You have to remember that most people, I'm sorry, Trevor, are not watching this show. Most people are...
I'm sorry, Polly. What are you saying?
Millions, obviously, but there is still a number of people who have...
She's not coming back, is she?
on their Sunday morning. The challenge... So she reminds me a bit of sort of, when I was working for the Lib Dems in 2008, and, every time you'd come on TV, Nick Clegg would go on TV, people would say, but why has nobody heard of you? Why does nobody know anything about you? And that just sense that having any chance to break through, I think, is really challenging with the voters when you're not really the main story. What Matt Vickers was doing, which Kemi is doing, and seems like the right strategy for them, is to just talk about the economy. That is the strongest ground for the Conservative Party. And it's quite a pivot from what they were doing in the first 6 months of their year, which was really to just try and sound as much like Reform as possible, whilst saying, sort of, Reform's right, but we're nicer than them because we've got a record of delivery, when, of course, their record of delivery, as you were pushing him on, is 14 years of sometimes chaotic government. It was only really good in the first 5 years when the Lib Dems were in with them, of course.
As a former, what used to be impolitely called spin doctor, if you'd seen your guy come on the telly and say, we're going to smash it, would you be going, woo, or would you be going, oh, my God?
First of all, I was never a spin doctor. I'm the policy person.
I beg your pardon,
which is that's just really my excuse for not being...
I mean, for people handling politicians.
I was a spin doctor. I think I would be like, oh, no, which is exactly your point, which is this clip is going to be played forever and ever and ever. But having said that, you know, what does he have to lose by going out there and saying, yes, I'm really going to try. I don't know where the results are going to end up, but that's not going to prevent me from actually trying and going for it.
There's no fundamental contradiction to what we just heard, though. I thought he was really good and punchy, I have to say, and I don't really care if that clip gets played when it's lost. Well, it's gone, isn't it? I mean, you know, if you've lost in the Eurovision Song Contest, it doesn't matter if every time you hear the song you go, oh, do you know that one was nil point? But I do think there's a bit of a problem here and I completely agree that the Tories and Reform probably need to get into some accommodation. They don't need to do it until much closer to the election. But the oddity is, at the same time, we're saying Kemi Badenoch is much improved, which I think is true, but she seems to stand against that. So can you get across that bridge? If you're the Conservative Party, does that mean you have to drop your present leader to get into that deal? Because that's certainly been the suggestion that people like Robert Jenrick, if you're talking about what everyone now calls, you know, lean and hungry young Turks, I mean, like, yeah, Robert Jenrick would, you know, eat us all for Christmas lunch. But that's his play, isn't it, that he wants to move closer. Kemi Badenoch, because every time I've mentioned it to her in interviews, I'm sure it's been no different if you've spoken with her, Trevor and others, that she just says she doesn't want to go there. That's my question. If she improves, but at the same time, they need the deal. Does that still take us into a changed territory?
Well, and let's not forget that there are people, it's not Nigel Farage's position, but increasingly people on the right of politics associated with reform, sometimes supporting reform, who believe that Kemi Badenoch, as a black woman, should not be allowed to be in our parliament. And so, therefore, I do think the Conservative Party needs to think about how it engages with that emerging discourse, the kind of shifting of the Overton window of what's considered legitimate, you know, suggestions that there should be remigration, expulsion of people like Kemi Badenoch from this country. I personally find that offensive. I stand against it.
Reform say that is a sort of wild fringe.
I don't think anybody's really talking about expelling Kemi, but anyway, look, why don't we take a break and digest the concept of Matt Vickers representing Britain at Eurovision? I'm going to take some time on that. In just a moment, we'll hear once again from our panel.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report, and this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Now, looking back over this year, there's one story, and it's a grim one, that has been present and had a big impact on both sides of the Atlantic. That is the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein's link to public figures. Here, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is no longer a prince, and Peter Mandelson is no longer an ambassador to Washington. Over there, the conspiracy theories, rumours and allegations continue to swirl, including around President Trump. Let's see what we think we make of this. And what do you think? Is this going to have a long-term political impact, or is it just a good story for us?
Well, it depends on which side you're on in terms of how you analyse the American politics of this. I mean, in the end, the Trump administration had to go along with this massive release of files. There was so much stuff in there. Most of it is kind of meaningless, tawdry, images of people who lived very tawdry and I think in many ways all over publicly sexualised lives. The difficulty for the Trump administration was that they had made that promise to clean out the swamp and then didn't want to do so and were effectively forced into the position of going for this big release by the base. It's the first time I think we've seen Trump forced by MAGA, by his own movement in many ways, to do something I don't think ultimately he wanted to do. It takes him back too much to his world of rubbing shoulders in New York with Epstein and others around him. But you have to say at the moment, there's no smoking gun there on Donald Trump. That's probably also because the terms of the release, what we're seeing, is actually still curated. However, if I were on the other side, I would not put as much money as perhaps people have done on, well, we're going to get Donald Trump on this one. I think Donald Trump's a very old man in many ways, but I don't think there is, and it has certainly had a past in many ways with some sleazy parts in it. But I'm not convinced that we know that there's anything in the Epstein files that is going to come anywhere near to, if you like, bringing down Donald Trump or mortally wounding him. One of the things that strikes me about some of the images that have come through is that they are from maybe 25, 20 years ago. That doesn't make it any better or worse, but what it does tell you is that Jeffrey Epstein is a man who wanted to get close to the powerful and influential. And paradoxically, during that period, Donald Trump wasn't particularly influential in politics. He was a bit of a joke. So I don't think it's all that surprising he's not in this tranche.
No, I agree with that, and I agree with what Anna has said. I think to your sort of earlier question about its significance, I think it does speak to that sense that there is an elite out there that just carries on doing what it wants to do regardless of propriety or, cultural sensibilities. And I think that the release of the files, and as you say, those tawdry images, I think it compounds that sense for most people who are far removed from the political world who are tracking this, sort of minute by minute, release by release. And I think that the idea that actually it is partisan, whether it's Trump and the MAGA movement or Republicans or indeed, the Clintons and the Democrats, I think it does put everybody in this one big lump of the idea that actually the elites just continue to do whatever they want. And I do think the Dems have got a bit of an own goal here because of the Clinton connection. And I do worry that actually what they've done is shot themselves in the foot around some of those connections too.
The Republicans are indeed trying to make this into a Clinton story, calling it the Clinton files rather than the Epstein files. Do you think they might have any success with that?
I think that there's no question that it, as Salma said, it's a bit of an own goal for them. On the other hand, there is a reason why, if there were references to Donald Trump in these files, you know, the redactions are extraordinary. The people who are releasing these files are not the Democratic committee or the people who passed the legislation. It is the Trump-controlled Department of Justice who are able to control what is redacted and what has been included in these files. So the idea that it's definitely everything and the reason Donald Trump is not in them is because Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong, I think is clearly absurd. Does that mean there's any way to actually get hold of that information without a kind of deep state whistleblower? I don't see how the Democrats could get hold of anything that would tar Donald Trump. The challenge is deeper than that, though, in that Salma's right, that there is this kind of elite, a story about an elite who gets away with whatever the hell they like, right? And with the QAnon conspiracy associated with MAGA, a very strong sense that those people were pursuing extensively paedophilia, kidnapping, you know, in some versions of the story, thousands and thousands of children in order to perpetrate abuse on them. It's clear that Jeffrey Epstein, he's a convicted paedophile, but also that some of the more ludicrous claims associated with QAnon are simply not true. The challenge for Donald Trump is that he associated himself with that movement to kind of clean out the elite, clean out the swamp. That's why one of his electoral commitments was to release the Epstein files, as if he was an outsider. He wasn't an outsider, even if he wasn't, as you say, right at the pinnacle of this.
Is there, I guess we have to ask this, is there a danger here that, you know, the politicisation of this issue means that we're forgetting actually the real thing here, which is that there are now, 1,200 young, I was going to say young women, they're girls who were effectively exploited and abused by this man. I wonder if a little bit of this tells us something about what, bluntly speaking, the average person would say is wrong with politics, that actually 24 or 48 hours in, we're already talking about political advantage and not about the kids who were...
Well, yeah, absolutely. You know, that's the first and the main victims are these young girls, and as you say, many underage. And even those who were, if you like, technically overage, who were vulnerable, who were manipulated, who were trafficked. Absolutely, Trevor. But I also wonder, sometimes, you know, you can deflect in many ways, which is, there are also people who were around Epstein who continue to consort with him, including people like Peter Mandelson, just one example. So you could also say you've got to keep shining a light on the politicians, because otherwise, so let's just talk about the girls, also lets a lot of other people off the hook.
All right. In just a moment, we'll speak live to Joe Bennett, who is the son of a detained couple, Craig and Foreman, detained in Iran.
best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'll take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
The son of Craig and Lindsay Foreman has urged the government to take action to ensure they're released from Iranian detention after the British couple were charged with espionage earlier this year. Joe Bennett says that the Foreign Office approach of wait and see is cruel, as his family faces their first Christmas in Tehran's notorious Evin prison. We're joined by Joe now. Morning, Joe.
Morning.
When was the last time you spoke to your parents?
To be honest with you, we since they did a hunger strike a few weeks back, and since that we have been able to speak to them both daily, pretty much. So I spoke to my mum yesterday.
Okay.
Having these calls is bittersweet because it means a lot to me and us as a family to be able to reconnect with them after so long of not speaking to them. But you hear about their daily struggles, you hear they do put on a brave face for us to try and protect us, but you do hear the sorrow in their voices at times. And as I say, it just makes the whole thing a lot worse because you know that they're in a position they shouldn't be in. Although I love speaking to my mum and it makes it a lot easier, as I say, it's bittersweet.
What's their condition, their physical health and so on?
I mean, my mum's suffering a lot with her skin and weight because the ventilation in the place is not very good. It is extremely dirty. She's cooking in kitchens filled with rats. I mean, it's dire, to be honest with you, for them both. They've lost a lot of weight because there isn't enough nourishment. You know, they're eating rice and gristle, basically, every day. They can't really exercise. You know, it's overcrowded, it's cramped. And Craig's really struggling at the moment. He's had an abscess in his tooth for a couple of months and he won't get it treated in the hospital because he says the conditions are just not up to par and he doesn't want it to do any worse than than good it would do. So the conditions are poor, to say the least. You know, that's a very polite way of putting it. And they are, as I say, struggling every day, but they try to keep strong for us and each other.
Are you talking to our government about this? And can you say what part our Foreign Office has played?
Yeah, I mean, we are in communication with the Foreign Office and you know, the UK government. We have had a meeting with Yvette Cooper recently in the last couple of months. But there is this policy, it seems, to just sort of sit and wait and allow this judicial process, which is, in my eyes, a complete circus, to play out. You know, we were told almost 2 months ago when they last were in court that a sentence would be passed in a couple of weeks. We're now 2 months down the line and nothing has happened. And I keep saying that we need to be being more accountable as a government and speaking out. You know, they are accused of espionage and spying for the British state, and yet that UK same government won't come out and defend them and say that they completely deny the allegations.
What does the Foreign Secretary say when you put that to her?
It's all about that they don't want to be seen to interfere with the judicial process. That's what the response is. And I kind of say, well, I understand that, but this is not a normal court of law. We've been told that by people who've been there before and various NGOs. And they're also not being accused of something like shoplifting or a petty crime. They are being accused of espionage, right? This is a state-level charge of crime, and they need to be backing their UK citizens. That's what I believe needs to be done, and taking a stand and saying, this isn't right, we do not agree with it, and we want our citizens home as soon as possible.
I think it will come as a surprise to people listening, and to be honest, comes as a surprise to me, to hear that British government officials who, in other circumstances, are pretty clear that they don't have much time for the legitimacy of the processes, judicial processes in Iran, saying that they have to wait for the judicial process to play it out. Is that a diplomatic thing, do you think, or is it genuinely felt, or what is the story there?
I think it may be a bit of both. I think it may be a bit of a diplomacy thing. I also feel like they don't want to rattle the cage at all. But I kind of think that it gets to a point where we've now given enough time for this judicial process to play out and to see if a sentence has been passed. But we're, as I say, 3 months after that last court appearance and nothing has happened. So that doesn't seem like a normal court of law. If a sentence has been passed but not given, it feels like they're waiting for something. And that's what I believe is happening, is we're at a bit of a stalemate right now, is that, you know, Iran are waiting for the UK to move, UK are waiting for Iran to move, and stuck in the middle of my parents and us. And that is the most frustrating thing, is they say that there's quiet diplomacy, and I hope there is. I hope there is work going on in the background. But until they're home, I need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the pressure on to make sure that that work is being done.
By my reckoning, they've been there, what, 312 days? 352 days, I beg your pardon. Do you feel a bit let down?
Yeah, let down, disappointed, angry, frustrated, sad. There's so many emotions that come into it, to be honest with you. But towards the government, I think, yeah, frustrated is the number one word, because they're very good at communicating and absorbing our frustrations and, you know, being a sponge for the emotions. But that, to us, doesn't get the end result, which is to get, you know, my mum and Craig home. And the trouble is, I just don't know what turns the dial. You know, I just don't know what it is that we need to do or they need to do that will get them home.
You, of course, it's Christmas week. It's not going to be a great time for you. How are you going to mark it? And if you had a message for your parents now, what would it be?
Yeah, this Christmas is going to be hard. Very hard. They were both pretty influential in organising Christmas and keeping that Christmas spirit alive, and we've lost that a lot. As I say, it makes it a little bit easier. I can speak to my mum, but it also makes it a lot harder this time of year because, you know, she's talking about, what have you got planned? And I feel a sense of guilt telling her I'm going to my dad's and I'm having Christmas lunch down in Brighton, because she will be stuck in a cell and not being able to celebrate it, right? So that really does hit home. If I had a message for them both, it would be I love them both very, very much. That we are continuously fighting for their release, and that, you know, we will get them home and this will come good. But I just need them both to stay strong for themselves and one another.
Joe Bennett, thank you very much for your time, and stay strong for Christmas.
Yeah, thank you very much.
In just a moment, we'll reflect on a year where reality has often seemed more bizarre than satire.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
(2025) is drawing to a close. Despite being in power for less than 18 months since winning an absolutely stonking majority, it must have felt like a pretty tough one for the Prime Minister. Well, from an end-of-year perspective from one of his loyal backbenchers, I spoke to Rosie Holt alter ego MP. It's been an extraordinary year. How do you think your Prime Minister's been doing?
Look, Trevor, I think the Prime Minister has been really good. He's shown what our goals are for the future. He's shown what we believe in. He's done amazing things this year, and I'm really excited to where 2026 is going to end up.
Well, he's ending up at -50 in polls. I mean, that's not really where the Prime Minister would want to be, is it?
Well, look, Trevor, what is a poll? You know, there are so many different ways of looking at polls, isn't there? I mean, my daughter did a poll this morning, you know, about what sandwich to have. It doesn't really... What we're interested in is the facts.
The Prime Minister has spoken several times in the last couple of months about what he seems to see as the main opposition, which is reform, Mr. Nigel Farage.
Yes.
What would be your message to Mr. Farage at this time?
Well, Trevor, I think Nigel Farage has some real questions to answer about his past. And I'm not afraid to say it, Trevor. I'm a straight-speaking person. I do think some of Reform's policies that they're proposing are racist. Now, I'm not saying they're racist, and I'm not saying the people who support those policies are racist. I think people want to remember not to go for Nigel Farage, who's a snake oil salesman, but go to Labour. We are not selling snake oil. We are selling proper, high-quality oil.
There's been a lot of talk in the party about a potential leadership contest. And people mention your name in that context. Are you planning to have a tilt at the leadership?
Look, Trevor, I have the utmost belief in our Prime Minister, and I really think someone has been watching a bit too much Celebrity Traitors. I have no plans at this moment to even think about that. I fully believe in Keir Starmer, Prime Minister.
Well, that was Rosie Holt as her parody MP, but you tell the difference, mate. But anyway, the last few years, reality has seemed increasingly more ridiculous than the made-up stuff. So, with that as our theme, let's reflect on the last 12 months. And I'm back with Anne and Salma and Polly. Anne, sometimes difficult to tell the difference, isn't it? I mean, she could get elected.
It's very worrying, isn't it? She could actually get elected. And of course, she's not running for office at all. And he's the best Prime Minister we've got.
Yeah, what I especially loved was because I've had that a lot in here. All right, let's examine your crazy moments of the year. Who's got the first one?
So my craziest moment of the year was the totally bizarre press conference that was undertaken by the Chancellor that took over morning broadcast, which then said absolutely nothing. Because when I heard that this was happening, I thought, my God, they've taken over the... I mean, I turned to my husband and I said, oh, my God, are we going to the IMF? Are we going to need a bailout? Because it was so dramatic. And then there was sort of nothing. And then there was all these stories about income tax, changes and all this kind of stuff. And it was just very... for me personally, anxiety driving, but also it was the moment where I thought, oh my God, the wheels have come off. To have done that, when you're supposed to control the narrative when you're in government and the agenda in the way that, people like us who were sort of backroom people were supposed to, I thought, my God, the wheels have really come off.
So mine's a budget one as well, actually, because after all of that run up to the budget, the leaks, the endless kind of discourse, for then... the most stupid thing of all to happen, which is that the OBR accidentally published basically the budget documents an hour before poor Rachel Reeves stood up. It did just feel like it's the parody thing. It's what somebody who was trolling you for leaking too much of the budget would have done.
It's straight out of the thick of it, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, I somebody rang me up from here and said, oh, by the way, because I was getting ready to watch the thing. And the guys here rang up and said, you don't need to watch it. Got it all. They sent it to me. It's weird. What's yours, Anne?
Well, I'm going all splashy and sequiny, because it is nearly Christmas after all. I'm going for Andrea Jenkins at the Reform Party conference with her arms out, windmilling and singing a song which went, and I think it went a bit like this.
I'm an insomniac. I'm an insomniac. Staring at the ceiling.
They're saying that, move on. But frankly, I could watch this for like half an hour. I mean, it's
such an interesting choice.
Well, it was kind of... See, this is the point. Rosie Holt feels real by comparison to the real thing. Mine, by the way, is the international one. And I just love the idea of the FIFA World Cup of Peace being handed for the first time to, I mean, you can understand...
Oh, they deserve each other.
And what I particularly love is that there's these zombie hands coming up from the ground to hold up the globe. And the best thing apart of it, we can't show the clip, but the best part of it was that Trump put the medal round his own neck. It was just fantastic, the whole thing. All right, look, there were things which purported to be serious. I suspect some of them were a bit alarming. Anne, Zelensky.
Yeah, I think you have to think back. I mean, as I spent a lot of time in Russia and Ukraine and still follow that conflict and whatever turns out to be the end game quite closely. But the day that really shook everyone, I think, involved was that terrible encounter of Zelensky and Trump and the tearing down of Volodymyr Zelensky, who for all his flaws and for all the flaws of this Ukrainian domestic politics, has been an extraordinary war leader. He basically stood up in the moments of that invasion and said that his country would not give in, and it has not after 3 years of intense pressure from Russia. But the absolute lack of respect and the fact that it showed the path to where we are now, that Donald Trump would not give Ukraine anything like his full support. It was a shocking moment. I was just remember being somewhere and hearing the news and going to see, oh, it can't be as bad. Oh my gosh, it really is that bad.
Yeah, I mean, we've got time to discuss some of this happily. Do you think, Polly, that marked a change in the way that international relations get done now? Suddenly, there are things which we seemed to happen behind the scenes previously, but are now out there, and that's Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, Donald Trump is an erratic leader, right? So just because he says something one day doesn't necessarily mean it will stick. And we have seen him kind of oscillate over the course of the year on sometimes slightly more supporting Ukraine and then sort of defaulting back to that more pro-Russian stance. There's no question to me we have we have shifted from an era which was established after the Second World War of essentially a rules-based order, which always had its faults and its inconsistencies, but the default was to go to the international institutions and to seek a rules-based system. We are now moving to a system in which power is simply power, and it is about the authority of strongmen leaders in competition with each other, a much more kind of 19th century model of how the international order works. And in particular, in the context of that, I think the national security strategy, which was then published very recently by the Americans, almost cements in a way that, you know, the offhand comments from Donald Trump don't feel permanent because you never know if he'll change his mind. Having that national security strategy, which kind of puts into...
This is a document that says that Europe may be reaching a civilizational collapse.
Exactly, that Europe is civilizational collapse, and that does basically call an end to the era of kind of Pax Americana, of that North Atlantic alliance, on which we have depended absolutely for our defence. And so I can imagine us looking back on both that press conference and this year in international diplomacy as, you know, in 25, 100 years, as very much a sea change.
That's it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think all of that is sort of correct in terms of its analysis, but there is another element to this, which is you hear with people who are geopolitical watchers the idea of a multipolar world. So I think it's wrong to assume that Trump is really the only catalyst for this. He certainly accelerated the sort of divisions around the way we've seen the world, but the fact that China is rising, the fact that what is defined as the global south now no longer also adheres to the same principles of those international institutions and doesn't depend on them in the same way, all of that is pulling against the fabric of the things that we knew. I think what we then need to consider is whether our tweaking and our tinkering in government is enough to really face the challenges and changes that are now occurring in the world. And I don't think we really know how to cope with what's to come.
I think in fairness to the UK, we've been consistent across a change of government for all the mudslinging between the Conservatives and the transition to Labour. We've been consistent in support of Ukraine. Yes, we're laggardly on the rise of our defence spending. I was a bit perplexed that John Healey got to the end of the year and still has not put the actual number. Remember, we were supposed to be going up towards these ever higher percentages by the early 2030s. We're still not really hearing whether he's got that nailed on with the Treasury. But, you can't say that the UK is part of this E3 group, which has been really absolutely with Friedrich Merz and Macron, again, for all the differences. Everybody who said you're out of the picture after Brexit, wrong, wrong, wrong. We are totally back in the picture. The E3 is really driving the support in Europe. That is also very flawed. I was disappointed to see that the frozen assets seizure didn't go through. It is true, Polly's laid it out, quite rightly and darkly about the international picture. But remember, when the test has been brought to Europe, a lot of the polity of Europe has been failing on this. And it does remind us we have responsibility here, not just Donald Trump.
Before we get off on international affairs, I can't resist this because I'm relentlessly trivial. A lot of the diplomacy is personal. J.D. Vance was here and he went fishing with the then Foreign Secretary. And I think we've got an image of this, haven't we? It's lovely. Two blokes down by the river, sadly, without a fishing licence. Foreign Secretary got nicked for fishing without a licence. More broadly, I had my own sort of big moment, and I suppose it reflects what we have been talking about in polls. Reform's big moment, asylum hotels. And I myself would say this was the real emotion, the moment where you saw some of the temper of the country that perhaps mainstream politics ignores and, frankly, may carry on into 2026. Got about a minute. What do you think, Polly?
I don't think mainstream politics does ignore it, but I think that the maladministration...
Mainstream politics hasn't found a way of dealing with it.
No, but that's because not enough people are interested in the mechanisms of how you just get things done in government. This is basically public maladministration and incompetence that needs to be dealt with operationally.
I would absolutely concur with that, and I think that there are things that people exploit. There's ways to make people angry without actually looking at how you want to fix it, and that's going to be Reform's challenge going forward.
Both true, but nonetheless, say you had a solution, if you like, a technical sort of band-aid solution to what to do with those people who'd come in, you know, by irregular means, which ended up, as you point out, becoming a flashpoint. That's a disconnect with the political class.
That's it for this year. I'll be back next year on the 4th of January. Can't promise you 11 pipers piping, but we might have some lords a-leaping. Happy Christmas. Happy New Year.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.